Norwegian knives are not instruments of trying to hurt anyone. These are very functional for whittling wood and, like we would use a pocket knife for cutting rope, opening your mail, whatever. It's totally different than an American knife because it has no hilt. That has a disadvantage in is you have to be careful not to cut yourself if you're, doing something strenuous like field dressing a deer or something. You have to be careful. I usually put my finger behind the back butt here, and so you don't hurt yourself if you're cutting, because they are extremely sharp. I've been making knives for over 30 years about now. I don't make a tremendous amount of knives, maybe 8 a year or so. And I do serial number my knives, so I know exactly how many I've made, 206. In teaching, I've had over 500 knife making students, and they've all produced a knife, so that adds up to quite a few knives that are floating around in western Minnesota here.
Well, Gene Tokheim is my mentor, and I learned a lot from him. Gene and his family had come back from Norway. Gene had learned this over in Europe, and he thought he'd try doing some teaching. My son and Gene Tokheim's son were the same age. They were lifelong friends. And my son made a knife when he was quite young with his friend Luke. And then in '98, I took a class that Gene was putting on in Milan, and I got hooked right away.
John is a natural. I have had maybe a handful of students that could see it and pick up that knife, and automatically they could do it. And John was one of them, and now of course he's a great teacher too. So
I like teaching. I like being around different people. I think I can get the lesson across pretty well, although I always worry about it. I don't think I'd want to be a teacher for a living. I just enjoy being around people and showing them this. It's an easy class to fall back on. We know we're going to have good participation generally. There's always a sprinkling of locals and people from far away. In this last class we had people from Nebraska, Montana, Twin Cities, Hibbing. People will travel a great distance to stay here for several days to take a class like this. And yeah, people that want to travel that far really do have a yearning to experience this. Well, the Milan Village Art School, it's a folk art school. Basis was in offering Scandinavian type arts. We've been here for over 25 years. It keeps growing every year. We will almost have more students wanting to take the class than we'll have space for. We've offered a satellite school. Milan being the main campus, St. Paul is our satellite town. Working with our hands, I think perhaps interests people. The biggest challenge for a beginner is removing enough wood on a handle. And if a person removes the wood to the level he's comfortable with and he doesn't want to go any further, I'll tell him, well, then work with hand tools. There are a lot of people that have never been around a bandsaw or a power sander, and you have to ask that question of the class. Are you familiar with this? Are you comfortable with this? When I had industrial arts growing up, we did a lot of different things in there than what kids do today. And then growing up on a farm, you were expected to do a lot of things that a lot of other parts of our society don't get an opportunity to do. Maybe people take the class to experience this, even ever so briefly.
You train the student to use their eye to design their knife. They don't all have to be the same. So there's some creativity involved, and some of the young students I've had are extremely creative in the things they come up with. And usually if I figure they can handle it, I let them run with it and do a little bit different things than is your traditional Norwegian knife. So. And I love the three different types of materials. You know, you're working with wood, birch, and you're working with silver and also leather.
Well, the knives that the students make in these classes are basically made up of three parts. That's a handle, the blade, and the sheath. The wood that we work with generally is birch, Scandinavian birch. The blades that we work with are laminated Scandinavian blades, which means there's 3 layers of steel, 2 mild layers sandwiching a hard steel. That's the core of the blade that gives its sharpness and hardness. The leathers that we work with are European leathers. They're tanned a little differently than American style. We use an Italian leather that keeps its shape over time. And I use a German half-tan leather. Both leathers make a sheath that is strong enough and safe enough that it does not need a liner. The style of the knife is such that the knife stays in the sheath without any mechanical fastening. It's held in place by friction. It'll click into place, yet you can pull it out with one hand, yet it stays in the sheath very easily. People are always very happy with their project when they're done. At the end of the class, the class lays their knives out on a nice sheepskin and they're photographed, and they always look very nice. It's even if they aren't 100% perfect, they're a great feeling of satisfaction.
The students that took my class last week, they're going to take those 10 knives home and show them to all their friends and relatives, and they're going to say, wow, you made that? And a lot of people wonder, nah, you didn't make that. Because it's really hard to figure out how that could possibly be done if you just look at it. And those silver pieces they're made for you, aren't they? No, you have to make those. The Tokheim ancestry is from the Bergen area, Norway, and the family farm is still there. And the third cousins are still running the farm. So that is why I wanted to pass that tradition along.
It's hard to look over the horizon to see where this is going. I don't want to believe that this is this rebirth or this interest has a bubble and then it collapses. As long as we have somebody that's willing to teach it, I think there's always going to be somebody willing to study it.
When I took my first ceramic course in 1968, I love that too, and I was captivated, and doing that some 50 years later. So in the knife making, after I took that course, I was captivated by that, and was also very much part of my heritage. Wanted to pass that on to others, and I don't know, I just, because I loved it so much, I figured other people would too.
Visit pioneer.org/postcards to catch up on missed episodes and to find out more about your favorite segments. This program on Pioneer Public Television is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008. Additional support provided by Mark and Margaret Yakel-Julien in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. ShalomHillFarm.org. Live Wide Open, a regional movement that encourages people to make a great life for themselves in west central Minnesota. More at livewideopen.com. Alexandria, Minnesota, a year-round destination with hundreds of lakes, trails, and attractions for memorable vacations and events. More information at explorealex.com.